Hello guys, so this is your teacher here and I will be presenting reported speech for you guys. Very important to take into consideration is that I will go a little bit fast through the presentation, but do not worry because any questions that you have, I will be answering they're online with you guys. So very important to notice that we're using reported speech with backshifting. What is backshifting? Basically, what backshifting is that we're going to be using past tenses. We're not going to be using present tenses for this reported speech, okay? Very important to keep that in mind. And also, before we start, remember this presentation is brought to you by my man Tanjiro. So Tanjiro from Demon Slayer. Remember, we have to keep a little bit of culture in our classes, so you're welcome. Here we go. What is reported speech? Well, first off, we have on the left Zenitsu. He's saying, "I'm feeling sick." This is what we see, or in this case, what we listen to. Sorry, this is what we listen to when somebody speaks. Right? They would say something. We're gonna perceive it, and that is basically speech itself. In this case, direct speech, if we want to be more precise. How do we see reported speech? It would come into play when we're in a conversation. So on the right, we have two people talking. So somebody asks, "Where is Zenitsu?" And then Tanjiro is going to say, "He said he was feeling sick." So that he said he was feeling sick, that action right there, that is reported speech. It is basically when somebody is saying what somebody else said. So somebody's reporting what somebody said. That is basically what reported speech is. You might be more familiar with it in the term of gossip. It's really um, common for somebody to gossip, and you're going to say, "This person said this and this about you," etc. So moving on, when do we use reported speech? I already gave you a couple of examples, but sometimes someone says a sentence, for example, "I'm going to the cinema tonight." Later, maybe we want to tell someone else what the first person said. So that would be reported speech when we want to tell somebody else what somebody told us or what we heard somebody say. Here's how it works. Okay, so in this case, we're only going to be using two reporting verbs. We're going to be using said and told. And we have some examples with said. So we have two things, like I mentioned, direct speech and reported speech. What is direct speech? It's what somebody says. What is reported speech? What somebody says that somebody else said. Okay, so first case, direct speech. "I like ice cream." Let's imagine my cousin told me that she liked ice cream. So that would be direct speech. But if I use that information and I go tell my mom, she said that she liked ice cream, that would be reported speech. Very important to notice, we have that in parentheses. Now, why is that in parentheses? Well, it is in parentheses because it means we can remove the parentheses and that, and the sentence would still make sense. So we can use that or we can remove it and it's going to be correct. Underneath that, we have an example with told. So we have direct speech. "I sleep 8 hours." Let's imagine my best friend told me this. So if I wanna, if I want to tell somebody else, I would say, "She told me that he slept 8 hours." So that would be reported speech. Very important to notice is what we have underlined. We have told, and we're adding something right there. That thing that we're adding is an object pronoun. Okay, so if we want to use told, we need to use an object pronoun because we need to mention who was told that, who received that information. Okay, if you don't remember object pronouns, I would recommend that you guys Google that really briefly because we're gonna need them if you want to use those particular verbs. So this next slide, we have our friend Inosuke. So Inosuke says, I have just gotten car insurance. If we want to change that into reported speech, we would have Inosuke said that he had just gotten car insurance. So there we have another example of reported speech. This next slide is something that you have to memorize. Um, so if you really want to master and get a good grade on the exam, you're going to have to practice with this table right here. We need to take note that some of them have an asterisk. What does this asterisk mean? It means that it's not going to change. Here we can see in the first columns, we have where it says tense, direct speech, and what it's going to change to in reported speech. So we have present simple changes to past simple. We have present continuous, which changes to past continuous, past simple, past perfect, and so on and so forth. We have a lot of different examples right there. So with this one, you're going to have to take your time, go over it, check all of the examples because all of them have their own examples in both direct and reported speech. So good luck with this one, guys. But we move on to reported questions. What if we want to say what somebody asked us? Can we do this? Yes, we can. So how do we make reported questions? Well, the tense changes are the same that we just saw in the previous table. They're going to be the same. And we keep the question word. Okay? The very important thing though is that once we tell the question to someone else, it isn't a question anymore. Okay? We have to remember that. We need to change the grammar to a normal positive sentence. So what do we mean with this? We have here a direct speech question. Somebody says, where do you live? Okay, somebody asked us this on the street. When we get home and our parents asked us, did somebody creepy ask you anything? Yeah, we're gonna say, yeah, you know what? This lady, she asked me where I live. So that is gonna change completely. Notice we have the where. We do keep that where right there, but we remove the do. It's no longer a question. And we have I live right there, which would be the structure for a normal positive sentence. Subject and then the verb. So what just happened here? The direct question is in present simple tense, okay? We make a present simple question with do or does, but we need to remove that because we don't need a question anymore. Then after I remove that, I need to change the verb into past simple. Remember we were changing all the verbs into past simple because this is reported speech back shifting. So we have a lot more examples to come. Okay, so here we can see on top, somebody asked, where is Julie? We want to change that into reported speech. So we are gonna keep the where, okay? So we keep the where right there. She asked me where Julie was. Is Julie, when we start with the verb to be, and then the subject, that is the structure of a question. So remember, we have to change those into the structure of a positive sentence. So we need to start with the subject, and then we're going to go with the verb to be in past, because remember, we're doing only past. So what just happened here? Well, I just basically explained it right now, but let me go ahead and read this also. We make the question form of the present simple of be by inverting, which means changing the position of the subject and the verb. Okay, so we need to change those in order to make it a positive sentence. Here we have WH questions and some examples for those WH questions, which is basically what both examples that we already saw, they're WH questions. So let's just read one of them. We have, who was that fantastic man? So if we want to change that, remember we're going to keep the who. Yes, we're going to keep it. but we need to start with what? We need to start with our subject, correct? So we have who that fantastic man had been. Why do I have had been? Remember, if you didn't catch it by chance, past simple changes to what? Past perfect. Yes, that's correct. Past simple changes to past perfect. All of that is in the table that was shown. So you can backtrack in the video or you can check the PowerPoint presentation and you're going to see that past simple changes to past perfect. Let's do one more. So we have, what are you doing? So this is present, right? Present continuous. She asked me what I was doing. So we keep the what right there. We have to change this though. Instead of a question, we need a positive sentence. I, verb to be, verb with ing. The verb to be is in past because it's past. So pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Just remember, we need to change it into positive sentences. But we leave the WH question inside the question itself. Okay, so I'm not explaining this first part, as we can see, where it says she asked me. It's always going to be that same structure, unless you want to use told me, which you can if you want to use it. But for questions, well, it's going to be a question, so you're going to be using asked me. If we want to use yes or no questions, yeah, we can. So let's go ahead and read these instructions. So we don't have any question words to help us. So no WHs, so no where, no whys, no who's, no where's, etc. But we're gonna use if to help us out. So if somebody asks, do you like chocolate? And I want to report that to somebody else, I'm gonna use this structure. She asked me if I like chocolate. Okay, so that's basically it. We're just adding if. We have more examples underneath. Do you love me? He asked me if I loved him. Are you living here? She asked me if I was living here. Okay, so we're just using an if. This is a regular positive sentence. Just remember, you have to practice the tenses. What tense changes to what tense in reported speech? That is going to be the main thing. That's going to be the most complicated thing, if anything, for you guys to have to remember the tense changes, and that would be it. Let's move on to the next one. We have here some important notes. When you report a question, the subject comes before the verb. You use ask as the reporting verb, and you don't use do, does, or did. Like you just saw, we removed them. And we use if or whether if it's a yes or no question. So this is just like a summary of what we just saw. When we're talking about imperatives, which are basically orders, what somebody would, an instruction that somebody would give somebody else, we have to be careful, okay? So when we're using imperatives, we use ask or tell. If somebody orders us, if somebody says sit down, and we want to report this to somebody else, we want to tell them what they said, we're going to say, she told me to sit down. So again, like in the beginning, we have an object pronoun. It's underlined right here, so you can see it easier. But yeah, just keep that in mind. We're going to need to use an object pronoun because we need to tell the other person who was told what, who received the information. So we have more examples here. Be on time. He told me to be on time. So who received the information? Me. Don't smoke. He told us not to smoke. Who received the information there? Us. We were the ones that received the information. So just be very careful with that. Remember, you need an object pronoun. This is very important for reported speech. We have to remember that there might be other changes depending on the context. For example, if we're talking about time, if the person said yesterday, it's going to be one day before that. If the person mentioned the place and they said here, well, it's not gonna be here anymore, it's gonna be there. If we have pronouns, if I, me, he or she changes to him or her. If we have positive adjectives, if the person says my, well, it's going to be his or her because we're not them, obviously. So just be very careful with the context. And so we have reached the end of the explanations. Do you guys have any questions? I will pause the video right now to answer any questions. All right, if there are no more questions or no questions at all, you guys have to make a concept map where you explain this topic. Feel free to go back in the video, use your notes, and make sure that you do your best. After that, we need to do these activities. So there are two activities, so we practice more our reported speech. And lastly, we have our references in case you guys want to check the website out where I got the information. I also use your book. So a lot of information is in the book. But if you're curious, you can go ahead and check those links out. So thank you very much for paying attention. This is the second time I recorded this. So I hope you guys appreciate it and study from this. See you guys later. Take care. Stay safe. Do not leave your house. Peace.